A very good evening to you. Welcome to KTN Prime. I'm Linda Ogutu. Let's take a look at the top stories tonight.
For the case of the kidney transplant, it requires around 2 million.
This is life. Is medical treatment becoming a preserve of the rich in Kenya? In the words of the man who witnessed the last moments of accident victims' life, secondary school teacher suspected of defiling his own students, and a Nairobi policeman testifies in the case of the Kampala 2010 bombing. Many thanks for joining us on KTN Prime. Our sign language interpreter there at the bottom end of your screen is Meresha Owiti. Tonight we are focusing on health matters. A dying man is denied treatment, all because he does not have money. This is becoming the norm here in Kenya rather than the exception, and it seems that getting sick if you have no money could well amount to a death sentence. Our reporter Sharon Momanyi puts this sad reality into perspective for you.
One painful step after another, Zephaniah Nyang'wara is helped out of his Ngong home by his family. Diagnosed with kidney failure in August this year, Zephaniah, who is a former member of parliament for Bomachoge constituency, tells us that such is what his life has been since 2003, in pain and needing a lot of support.
When they discovered that I had diabetes and high blood pressure, then all through I've been going to hospital, being given medicine until last year when I became seriously sick, and I've been going to one of the private hospitals in Kisii. So it was until August when again I became seriously sick. And when I went back to hospital, the high blood pressure was around 240. Then I was advised to be admitted in hospital. And when the doctor looked at me, he realized that the kidneys had failed.
But the cost of managing the condition has been overbearing to the former legislator.
Dialysis, I normally go 3 times a week. And one session costs 10,000. Then drugs per week is 5,000, and I normally do tests once after 2 weeks, which costs around 12,000. For the case of the kidney transplant, it requires around 2 million.
During his time in parliament, Zephaniah enjoyed a powerful status, rubbing shoulders and breaking bread with powerful leaders, including former President Daniel Moi. One would wonder how at this time he would not be able to manage his medical needs. Zephaniah, who this far has been relying on help from his family and friends, is conscious of such scrutiny.
Some of these members of parliament, when they retire, some of them are very poor now. Because, for example, on my case, I had used all the resources developing the constituency. We had no CDF during our time. And I had decided to make sure the constituency also is developed. And that is how I ended up being poor.
Soon after his term ended in 2002, Zephaniah says he started ailing and as such could not get employment. He has had to sell most of his property back in Kisii County to manage his medical needs as well as support his family. At the moment, he says that 5 of his children are out of school because he cannot pay for their fees.
I don't have any job. I'm just outside here. But friends and relatives have been contributing until almost now the account is being exhausted. They are almost becoming tired. So it is very difficult. at the moment. Yes, sometimes I can miss 10,000 and even stop going for dialysis.
Zephaniah is the face of many Kenyans from various backgrounds who are bogged down by the cost of medical care. More lose their lives for the same reason. Take the case of Alex Magada, who died last week as he could not be admitted in various hospitals for lack of funds.
We need to go back to the drawing board, where we are saying we need to rethink how much money we are giving to healthcare provision, how well trained are our personnel, how committed are we generally to right to health and to ensuring that each and every nurse is living a very fruitful life.
A health bill that is currently in Parliament seeks to address the issue of emergency medical services to patients. A different conversation that begs attention is that of the high cost of medical care in the country. Diseases such as kidney failure and cancer are killing more and more Kenyans by the day, and in fact it is largely because of the cost of treating and managing such diseases, and as such the high cost of medical care becomes a pertinent public health issue in the country, one that needs urgent attention. Sharon Momanyi, KTN News, Nairobi.
Sharon Momanyi putting a lot of issues there on perspective for you. That story by Sharon Momanyi is the basis of a big question tonight. We're asking you, should all hospitals be required to treat patients whether they have money or not? And of course you're looking at the chronic illnesses, as Sharon has been talking about, looking at cancer. Should all hospitals be required to treat patients whether or not they have money? Amos Kitui says health services is preferred for the rich. These are very sad realities. Bruno Bigoyo says, of course, human life is more important than money. Tweet us at KTN News. You can tweet me directly at Lindo Goto. You can send a short message to the number 22155. I'd love to sample your views during this bulletin. Alright, that story by Sharon Momanyi comes as the Kenyan Senate is asking for investigations into the death of an accident victim who was kept waiting in an ambulance for 18 hours as health institutions in Remy Mwangi spent the day with the ambulance attendant who witnessed the suffering of the victim in his last moments alive.
Brian Ochieng is a man in mourning. He has not lost any close relative, but the death of a man he met inside this ambulance 4 days ago has hit him hard. For over 18 hours, Brian tried helplessly to save the life of Alex Madaga, an accident victim who could not access proper treatment, apparently because his family could not raise the 200,000 shillings deposit demanded separately by two private facilities to admit him in their intensive care units. Even Kenya's premier referral institution, the Kenyatta National Hospital, declined him, saying there was no bed space at the hospital's ICU.
All the effort you put in him, they just went by the window. And then he asked me trying to see how the heads were feeling, because I had put myself in their shoes to be able to help them. You can get that picture if you can put yourself in the shoes and try to feel how the rest were feeling. Then you really know what was happening.
On this day, we find Brian going about his duties inside the same ambulance. The environment which he says now reminds him of the pain of his now deceased patient and the tribulations of his family in the 18 hours inside the ambulance.
So it is a point that I had to teach the relatives how to bank, because my driver is also a human being,
but that he tried his best and still did not manage to save Madaga's life has not killed his spirit. He says it has in fact reinforced his commitment to save more lives irrespective of how callous the providers of private medical services become.
Human life is something precious. Honest, money should not be the determining issue whether the person dies or not. It shouldn't. You have no money, get to them. You have the money, get to them.
And now the Senate is also demanding for answers over Madaga's death. Answers which they now want the Senate Health Committee led by Mohamed Kuti to provide. while the chairman of the Kenyan Nurses Union, Seth Panyako, wants county governments to invest more resources in upgrading their hospital services within the county hospitals instead of purchasing ambulances every year, as the end result is the congestion of patients at referral facilities such as the Kenyatta National Hospital. Muremi Mwangi, KTN News, Nairobi.
Dan Ochieng there, just recounting what really happened before he lost his patient 18 hours later. Remember, that is the basis of a big question tonight. We're asking, should all hospitals be required to treat patients whether or not they have money? Tweet us at KTN News. Send a short message to 2155. You can tweet me directly as well at Lindo Gutu. I'll be sampling some of your views, some of which are already coming in. We'll sample them during this bulletin. Now, police in Nairobi have arrested a secondary school teacher for allegedly defiling a Form 1 student. The 15-year-old student was allegedly raped in a toilet by her biology teacher. The school's administration was initially reluctant to report the incident to the police and was only forced to do so after students staged a riot and absconded classes. Michelle Ngele with the details.
A tragic story of a 15-year-old girl who on Wednesday, the 6th of October, was forced to go through an ordeal she would rather forget. Her teacher had allegedly ordered her to get out of class during evening preps and wait for him in the staff room. On her way, he is reported to have grabbed her, pinning her on the latrine wall and defiled her before threatening her not to tell a soul. But she says that her worst memory is how the school's administration attempted to cover up the incident. After telling her schoolmates, the victim was reportedly summoned by the head teacher on Friday and threatened not to tell her parents about the incident. The school took the girl for a medical examination at Nairobi Women's Hospital on Saturday afternoon, where she was given PEP medication for HIV, drugs that her mother is worried might not help because they were administered a few hours past the stipulated 72 hours. The school's administrator, however, went silent on the matter all weekend until Monday morning, when students boycotted classes, calling for the arrest of the teacher and chanting anti-rape slogans. The police were called in to quell the chaos. It was at that point that police arrested the suspect and took him to Parklands police station. Should he be convicted of the offence, for a term not less than 10 years, which may be enhanced to life imprisonment. According to reports by Nairobi Women's Hospital to the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights in 2006, a woman is raped every 30 minutes. Across East Africa, 31% of schoolgirls and 15% of boys report having been sexually assaulted, many by teachers. Sympathizers and well-wishers are now asking for speedy justice for the victim to ensure no more children will suffer in the hands of beastly teachers. Michelle Ngele, KTN News.
So it is emerging that Kenyans will have to wait a little longer for legal direction on resolving persistent land problems. This is because of a disagreement between the Ministry of Lands and the National Lands Commission. The two argue over two bills before Parliament intended to help in solving Kenya's historical land problems.
The commissioners at the National Lands Commission are not a happy lot. They accuse the Ministry of Lands of working behind the scenes to have the Lands Commission operate with one hand tied behind their backs. Instigator of seemingly growing discontent are two bills currently at the floor of the National Assembly. The Community Land Bill 2015 Clause 7 Cap 2 states that, quote, where a community claiming or occupying land identifies the extent and the boundaries of its land to the satisfaction of the Cabinet Secretary, the Registrar may issue an interim certificate of reservation for the community land to the community, end quote. It's one of the clauses in the bill that the Commission insists is loaded with ambiguity, as the Lands Commission says that there is no yardstick to measure the satisfaction of a Cabinet Secretary, hence creating an amorphous blanket power that is rife for abuse. The Commission also points out Clause 8 Cap 1 of the same bill that gives the Land CS power to adjudicate through a Gazette notice programs for purposes of registration of community land. The Commissioners insist the bills are meant to cripple the functions of the Lands Commission while reverting power back to the Land CS against the intentions of the 2010 Constitution. They also voiced their displeasure of the physical planning bill that allows the ministry to take over allotment of leases in the proposed laws, though that should be the responsibility of the commission. Attempts to get comments from the Parliamentary Committee on the Lands proved futile as the bill awaits debate before the Assembly in what could revive a bitter clash of roles between the two arms of government charged with tackling matters land. Timothy Otieno, KTN News.
Let's focus on security now. A Kenyan police witness has testified in the case in which 13 people are suspected of having masterminded the July 2010 Lugogo twin blasts that killed more than 70 people in Kampala, Uganda. Sergeant Ezekiel Lulei works with the Kenya Anti-Terrorism Unit in Nairobi. He told the court that the investigations established that one of the suspects, Muhammad Ali, had rented houses in different apartments in Nairobi but always vacated these houses before the expiry of the period he had paid for. Hearing of the case resumes Wednesday morning.
1 week.
And still in Uganda, opposition voices growing stronger against the regime of the incumbent President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. The latest is the fallout of a former Museveni ally, General David Sejusa, who is now threatening to lead a people's revolution against long-serving President Museveni. General Sejusa previously served as intelligence chief before he fell out of favor with Museveni. The general spoke exclusively to KTN's Solomon Serwanja in Kampala.
He was one of Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni's most trusted men, a four-star general, a member of the High Command of the Ugandan Forces, and the former director of both the external and internal security organization. General David Sejusa's military profile is that of a well-decorated soldier. His fallout with President Museveni was in June 2013, when he leaked a dossier to the media about an alleged plan to execute top government officials who were against the succession plan. According to the dossier, there were plans to have Museveni's son Muhoozi Kainerugaba succeed him as president in 2016. That fallout saw General Sejusa exiled in the UK for 2 years until he returned recently. His plan? To see the end of President Museveni's 30-year-old rule.
Museveni can never do any reforms. That's a waste of time. Because dictatorships are never reformed. They are dismantled.
As such, the four-star general talked of a plan to use people power to enforce change.
People will rise up, they will demand their right, and they have already started. You saw what happened in Rukungi. They arrested when Besigye was going there. The people went to the police and released themselves. The people can go to that state house, despite Mr. Museveni having those guns. Those guns will do nothing. Nothing. What will he do? What will Mr. Museveni do? If 1 million people or 100,000 people go, will he kill them, bring tanks? If he shoots people using those tanks, he himself will be accountable and he will see what will happen.
Sejusa's threats come on the heels of the rising political temperatures in Uganda as the country prepares for the 2016 elections. Recently, President Yoweri Museveni warned against any form of violence during the elections.
What happened in Kenya cannot happen here. I can tell you this. And those who try to do that will be smashed completely. He will not even remain with the trust.
He shall not allow that election. I had him threaten. No one will stop. No one will stop. Yes, people stop. People have ever stopped, and he knows it. People stopped Bulletin. People stopped the 1985 election. They have forgotten. There was supposed to be an election of Dr. Bulletin, 1985. We stopped it. The people. We were in Ruwero, by the way. But the people, they stopped it. In many other areas, yes, people can stop this election because it's meaningless.
The founder of the Freedom and Unity Front, a political pressure group, says that he has already started mobilizing in different parts of the country. The statements of General David Sejusa cannot be taken lightly, considering that he has now teamed up with top opposition leaders like Dr. Kizza Besigye, who believes in civil disobedience. But whether this can survive the iron fist of President Museveni is a question that history has answered. Solomon Serwanja, KTN News, Kampala, Uganda.
Solomon, thank you. A lot has been said about El Nino rains and the preparations that are being put in place, especially in Kenya. But remember, these rains are not just expected in Kenya, but the entire region. So let's cross over to Kigali, Rwanda now, and find out the state of preparedness for El Nino. Our reporter Eugene Anangwe with the details.
Just like in other parts of the region, Rwanda's weatherman has also forecasted El Nino rains, which is expected during this month, running through to December.
The whole country will have enough rainfall, and we pointed out those areas which will have normal to above normal rains. Those are areas of northern province, part of the central going to the east, then western province, southwestern province. Those are areas which we are expecting normal to above normal rains.
El Nino is normally associated with warming within global oceans, more especially in equatorial Pacific. A situation, according to Anthony, has been ongoing since July this year. Rwanda has in the past experienced heavy downpours, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Homes, schools, and other commercial buildings have been destroyed in the process. This is a scenario that officials say is likely to happen this time in the event of above normal rains. But with the warning having come early, officials at the meteorological department say there is no cause for worry.
There is no cause for alarm because we have given them the information very early, and they have embarked on preparations. And we think, in case if it comes, people are aware, people are prepared, and the interventions will be done in time.
The country last experienced the El Nino phenomenon between 1997 and 1998. The aftermath was disastrous, and officials at the Ministry of Disaster Management and Refugee Affairs say everything possible has been done to avoid a repeat of the same.
We have to consider that the risk now is lower than one we had in 1997, because the vulnerability in general has been decreasing. In different institutions, we have identified the element at risk, and now we work in a task force. There is a task force to manage the El Nino, combining different technicians from different institutions, and we meet every Friday to make sure or to monitor the implementation, the progress of what we have designed as a plan.
The weatherman and officials right here in Rwanda are saying that there is no cause for alarm when it comes to matters of above normal rains, and in fact, if El Nino was a person, all they would tell it is bring it on. Whether this level of confidence is enough to keep away the havoc from Mother Nature once the heavens open, only time will tell. For KTN News in Kigali, Rwanda, I'm Eugene Anangwe reporting.
You're watching KTN Prime, and we thank you so much for staying with us. So tonight, we're focusing on your health, the right to medical attention for every single Kenyan, and that is why we are asking, should all hospitals be required to treat patients whether or not they have money? Michael Wafula says private hospitals have to break even or close. What did government intend by upping my NHIS deductions from 320 to 1,700? Charles Otieno Hongo says, in cases of emergencies such as accidents, then all hospitals should be compelled to provide initial emergency help. Adam Sheikh asks, if all the vents are hooked up, where would you want the doctor to admit the patient who requires ventilation? Finally, Ledama says, no, only government hospitals should be required. You cannot force a business to treat patients and you don't support. Your feedback on our big question tonight, and we thank you for tweeting and for sending the short SMSs. We are now taking a short break. We'll be back. Of the union between Tanganyika and Zanzibar in relation to the Tanzanian election. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with KTN Prime. Let's now cross borders into Tanzania. On April 26th this year, the United Republic of Tanzania celebrated the 51st anniversary of the union between the mainland Tanganyika and the islands Zanzibar. Although the unification was a milestone in the post-colonial history of the African continent and beneficial to the region's peace, both Tanganyika and Zanzibar have had grievances about the union for decades. This has led to numerous debates that have even questioned the union's legitimacy and relevance. KTN's political editor Ben Kitili takes an in-depth look into the union, which has been a major issue in the 2015 election campaigns.
In April 1964, Tanganyika and Zanzibar came together to form the United Republic of Tanzania, the first ever political union between two independent countries in Africa in the post-colonial era. Although the Zanzibar Revolution of 1964 fast-tracked the unification, the Pan-Africanist ideologies of the two countries' leaders, the late Mwalimu Julius Nyerere and the late Sheikh Abeid Karume, were a major factor in uniting the two states.
We are a nation because of the union. You know, this is 1964. You're talking about more than 50 years. So more than half of our population, they have no idea what this country was before 1964. So most of us identify as Tanzanians. So in the absence of the union, our nationhood is actually, you know, quite threatened. Secondly, it has become part of our culture. Three, it is really very difficult now to talk of two different countries. So it is really political, it is really ideological, it is really cultural. That is the essence of our union. Economically, not much. Security, yes, is a very important security issue. We have no idea what would happen if Zanzibar was not part of the union. We have no idea if it became independent, because do not forget that one of the biggest push to have this union was the question of the security. So if you remove Zanzibar from the question of Tanzania, we have no idea what our security is going to look like. So it is also the question of security. Yeah.
So how does the union work? Tanzania has a president and vice president, both of who are elected to a 5-year term. The president of Tanzania appoints a prime minister to lead government business in the national parliament, a 357-member house. Zanzibar is semi-autonomous and elects its own president and 2 vice presidents. The legislative authority in Zanzibar over all non-union matters is vested in a House of Representatives. For example, as Tanzania's presidential hopefuls continue their hunt for votes, so do the presidential candidates in Zanzibar.
Niko tayari kwa mabadiliko. Niko tayari kwa mabadiliko.
Maalim Seif Sharif Hamad, who is the incumbent first vice president of Zanzibar, is also the opposition coalition UKAO presidential candidate in Zanzibar under the Civic United Front, CUF, which is extremely popular in Zanzibar.
The union is a very big political agenda in Zanzibar. It is very unpopular in Zanzibar not to support some level of independence of the Zanzibar as a country. Is very unpopular. And for CCM, it's very difficult to really very clearly say that we support Zanzibar autonomy, because the union of TANU and ASP creating the CCM was based on the union structure.
But are there any positives on either side?
Security, yes, is a very important security issue. We have no idea what would happen if Zanzibar was not part of the union. We have no idea if it became independent, because do not forget that one of the biggest push to have this union was the question of the security.
This has led to Zanzibar residents developing strong Zanzibari nationalism, many of them demanding that the union be dissolved. That dissolution call has been led by the Civic United Front, CUF, and has been a major sticking point in the Tanzanian constitution-making process.
The biggest question is really to have very frank, open, transparent debate about the state of the union and remove this from the level of the politicians, because now the discussion is really about the politicians. It's not too much about people. And we go back to the Warioba Commission report, which did a very thorough analysis regarding the challenges of the union and how they can be resolved. I think that there is a very fair agreement that we need to relook our structure. Maybe the two government structure of the union is no longer working for us.
So why did the two nations unite? Besides the vision of Karume and Nyerere, some scholars, including the late Professor Ali Mazrui, have contended that there was pressure from the United States and Britain to unite in the wake of the Cold War. The union between Tanganyika and Zanzibar has been a mixed bag of fortunes. For the big part, experts say there has been calls for dissolution for the two countries to focus on integration in East Africa. Whether that is viable at present is the question, and it is a real question in 2015 as Tanzanians prepare to elect their next government and subsequently complete the constitution-making process. Ben Kitili, KTN News, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
Alright, so you're watching KTN Prime. Thank you so much for staying with us. We're taking another break. When we get back, Joy Doreen Bira will have the day's business news.
Good evening and thank you all for keeping it KTN. Time for us now to take a look at business. I'm Joy Doreen Bira. Imperial Bank has become the second bank in 2 months to be placed under receivership by the Central Bank of Kenya. According to the banking regulator, Imperial Bank had irregularities and malpractices that exposed its customers to risk. With that move, Imperial Bank will cease normal operations and has already had its 2 billion shilling bond suspended from listing and trading on the bourse. KTN's Adelaide Chingole has more.
Until August 2015, Kenya had enjoyed 10 years of unblemished bank stability, with none of the country's 43 banks and one mortgage finance institution showing evidence of the mismanagement that had been the bane of the country's financial sector in the 90s. But on the 14th of August, all that changed when the central bank placed Dubai Bank under receivership owing to liquidity and capital deficiencies. 10 days later, CBK announced that Dubai Bank would be liquidated given the magnitude of the weaknesses. At the time, the central bank was commended for acting in time to save debtors and the financial sector at large from the risk of financial contagion. Fast forward 2 months and it was Imperial Bank's turn to be placed under receivership for what was initially termed as unsafe or unsound business conditions. According to CBK, directors at Imperial Bank had laid bare inappropriate banking practices that warranted immediate remedial action to safeguard the interests of both depositors and creditors.
This is the last thing that we expected, coming from a mid-tier bank, and now this, the receivership, quite unexpected.
The bank appointed the Kenya Deposit Insurance Corporation as a receiver manager to assume management control and advise CBK on an appropriate resolution strategy. The bank's normal operations were also suspended, with the exception of collection of loan repayments and any other payments. The closure of Imperial Bank comes just 1 month after long-serving CEO Abdul Malek Jan Mohammed passed away. Until his death, Jan Mohammed had served as CEO for 23 years. The closure also comes just 2 weeks successful issuance of a 2 billion shilling 5-year bond, which was marginally oversubscribed at 101%. The bond was set for listing at the Nairobi Securities Exchange on Tuesday, but that too has been put on the back burner after the Central Bank and the Capital Markets Authority suspended the listing and trading of the bond on the bourse. The latest decisions, which come just 2 months into the tenure of CBK Governor Dr. Patrick Njoroge, could open a can of worms about how weak banks have survived for years breaching banking guidelines without regulatory action. But others say CBK has just become more vigilant and aggressive, which could lead to more banks being put under the spotlight and greater stability of the financial sector.
I think right now the governor that we have at the central bank is very keen and has a very keen eye when it comes to now ensuring that these banks adhere to the regulation.
According to the Kenya Deposit Insurance Corporation, while under receivership, Imperial Bank will not carry out normal operations. Bank branches will, however, remain open to allow those servicing loan make payments. KDIC has appointed Peter Getere as receiver manager and is expected to develop a turnaround strategy to be presented to CBK in the shortest time possible. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.
Thanks, Adelaide. Kenya's main electricity generator, KenGen, has posted a 109% jump in pre-tax profit for the full year to June 2015, thanks to growth in its geothermal power capacity and higher electricity sales. The firm injected 280 megawatts of geothermal power in 2014, helping to lift revenues by 47% to 25.6 billion Kenya shillings. As a result, pre-tax profit for the year jumped from 4.2 billion to 8.69 billion Kenya shillings. However, the firm's after-tax profit was even higher at 11.5 billion shillings, thanks to a 2.8 billion shilling tax credit brought about a 150% investment allowance given to the firm's All-Career 4 project. And going forward, KenGen says it will be restructuring its balance sheet and also looking to raise additional funding for its other projects. KenGen's share gained 19.88% in Tuesday's trade, closing at 9 shillings and 95 cents. And KenGen's managing director, that is Albert Mugo, sat down with KTN's business reporter Adelaide Changole to discuss the results and tell us about the firm's future plans.
It has been a bad year for many of the companies in Kenya, most of them posting either reduction in profits or outright losses. But KenGen has backed that trend and has posted a 308% jump in its profit after tax. And we're joined by engineer Albert Mugo, the managing director of KenGen, to tell us more about this result.
Profit after tax will actually grow from 2.8 last year to 11.5 this year. Of course, it looks strange that the profit before tax is 8.6 billion and the profit after tax is 11.5 billion. But that's basically because of tax credit that we get as an investment allowance when you commission or when you put up a plant outside Nairobi. You get a 150% in terms of the tax credit. So that's what has driven our profit after tax to be higher than the profit before tax, because we got some tax.
Right, there was a mismatch with the current taxes by about a billion shillings, and the finance director said, you know, there's plans to raise additional capital. So perhaps you can tell us, what measures are you looking at? What exactly are you looking at to raise this additional funding?
Okay, what we're doing is we are thinking of a balance sheet restructuring, and one of it, the major part, will be a cash call, and we did get approval from our shareholders in December 2013 for a rights issue. Then it took us a bit of time with that program, because government being 70% shareholders in our company, we needed to consult with government on how government would take its rights and whether in fact there's appetite for that. So we had consultations with government, and finally government said, give approval actually in March this year, that if we go for rights issue to take its rights. And so it's after that we've been able to procure a transaction advisor who we are, since June this year, we've been working very closely with them, and we're at a point where we are almost ready now to start going to CMA, the regulator, for approvals and all that. And so we are working on this with transaction advisors, and very soon we'll be going to the public to give a program of rights issue. But as of now, because we don't have any approvals, I can't talk about it.
Jamii Bora Bank has announced plans to raise 5 billion shillings using a combination of debt, rights issue and bringing on board a strategic investor. According to a statement to shareholders, the bank would seek a strategic investor to inject 3 billion shillings to scale up the bank's business through investment in technology and strategy. The investor would have to bring on board commercial value in line with Jamii Bora's 5-year strategy, and the bank also plans to ask its current owners to inject an additional 500 million Kenya shillings through a rights issue. The last tool available to the bank is raising 1.5 billion shillings through convertible debt. A maximum of 6.25 million shares will be available to investors to lend, or rather who lend the bank about 1.5 billion, and the conversion of the debt will be effective 5 years after its disbursement. The debt arrangement implies that the bank expects its shares to be valued at least 240 shillings each after the 5-year period, and the bank's management has recommended the creation of 20 million shares valued at 66 shillings. Jamii Bora has called for an extraordinary general meeting for the 10th of November 2015 for shareholders to discuss and adopt the plans. And let's now take a look at how the markets did perform today. Look at the Nairobi Securities Exchange as well. For more business news, log on to our website, standardmedia.co.ke or KTNnews.com. I'm Joy Doreen Bira. Up next is KTN Sports.
Let's look at sports now. Gor Mahia forward Medi Kagere has won the Sport Journalist Association of Kenya Player of the Month for September in a ceremony held at Camp Toyoyo, Jericho on Tuesday. Kagere is the third Gor Mahia player to bag the most coveted individual accolade after teammates Ali Abondo and Karim won their award in March and June respectively. Kagere has found the back of the net 13 times and is the club's second top scorer after Michael Olunga.
Premier League, Moso Gor Mahia. As you've heard from one of our sponsors, look at the camera. Again, look at the camera. Is going to receive your trophy. Mehdi is going to receive cash.
And the journalists at Radio tried to see the good in me. And I would like to thank my fellow players because I didn't do this alone. It was the help of them to get to this course. And I congratulate my team as Gor Mahia.
Let's look at Safari Rally now. Fireworks are expected on the 36th edition of the KCB National Rally Championships, the Guru Nanak ground that will take place on the 24th of October in Konza.
With just Chath already crowned the 2015 KCB Rally Champion with the Guru Nanak edition left to go, fireworks are expected as the curtains come down on one of the toughest and most prestigious events on the rally calendar as drivers battle to leave a mark in this year's competition. 12-time Guru Nanak champion Ian Duncan, who has ruled the edition for more than a decade with 4 different navigators, will be seeking to land his 13th crown this year. With the rainy season already having started, drivers are expected to face a major hurdle with the course, but a majority are certain of good fortunes at the end.
We know the route, but now with the rain, we don't know what to expect, because if it rains, then the route totally changes. So we'll know once we've done our recce how to tackle the event, but for us is to go all out. For us is just to prepare our car for the worst. If it rains, we have to just make sure our car is fully sealed, no water leaking in anywhere going to mess up the engine. The rest is to leave it for the day of the rally, and I know the driver with the best skills in the mud is the one who's going to win. So.
Female drivers have not been left out either. Natasha Tundo, who is in an all-female crew, is seeking to end the season on a high. Tasha, as she is popularly known, together with her brother Carl Tundo, became the first ever brother and sister crew to win the Guru Nanak Rally in 2012. Now on her own, she is seeking a better position.
For Guru Nanak, I think it's just a question of finishing it in a good position, higher than we've ever, had. I think it's going to be wet, so I think it's going to be quite exciting.
On their part, the organizers have been impressed with this year's championship, which was won before the final leg, and like earlier championship.
I think the championship has been very exciting, encouraging to see that it was won early by Jasmeet Chate.
Guru Nanak Rally will take place on the 24th of October with the flagging off taking place at Syokimau Station. Robinson Okenye, KTN Sports.
A total of 16 teams are expected for this year's edition of the Kisii Sevens that will take place over the weekend at the Kisii Showground in the county. With the winners expected to pocket 200,000 shillings, the organizers of this year's edition are looking forward to having a majority of the top tier teams take part in the competition.
The one who's receiving, you and Charles are receiving.
We support the game of rugby. We like it to see it grow, and we like to see it spread across the country. So we take great pride in having supported the sport in the past. We've managed to attract really big teams, and this comes in between the fact that teams have the depth.
Is to grow the game, work with the stakeholders in the game, and we are happy that this is the second time we are working with the resolution held in such endeavor, and we hope that our partnership will go well beyond this event into the next series of the circuits.
KTN weather in a
Alright, so should hospitals be required to treat patients whether or not they have money? That is a big question that we are asking you tonight on KTN Prime. Lots of feedback. Michael Afula says private hospitals have to break even or close. No, I think I read that one before. The Uganda says the value of human life should supersede the allure for money, and emergency is just that. Adam Sheikh says the underlying issue is not denial of care, but the absolute lack of ICU beds in Kenya. 250 for a population of 40 million. Soko analyst says emergency treatment is the right in the constitution that every single medical institution must provide. Lots of feedback, I must say, and we thank you for watching KTN Prime, for being part of it, and of course for your contribution. That's where we leave it. Thank you so much for watching. For those of you on KTN News, Worldview begins right now, and you're looking at endangered tribes. Trust me, that is a conversation you do not want to miss. Have a good night.